Well, ladies and gentlemen, that didn't take long. Apparently, there are gaming urinalists that are out here absolutely melting down and coping over the simple nomination of Black Myth Wukong for the Game of the Year. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that I was heavily wrong over what they were going to announce as Game of the Year nominations for the Game Awards. And partially for me, I feel like this is a response to the overall conversation that's happening right now. Jeff Keighley right now is trying to minimize competition by trademarking the Game Awards. And then on top of that, he's trying to make it relevant again by not doing what he's always been doing, which is just announcing shill games and making sure that they win. But aside from that, Black Myth Wukong did in fact get nominated for Game of the Year, and that's all it took for a gaming urinalist like Joshua Robinson from The Gamer to melt down and want to try to do anything he possibly can to make Black Myth Wukong look bad and not worthy of a nomination.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
Now again, ladies and gentlemen, we have an article here from The Gamer with a headline that reads, Black Myth Wukong is the lowest rated game to get a Game Awards Game of the Year nomination. With some key takeaways that say the Game Awards have revealed its list of Game of the Year nominees this year, which include Black Myth Wukong. However, despite its massive popularity earlier this year, Black Myth Wukong has now become the lowest ever rated Game of the Year nominee. This is also during a year in which highly rated titles such as Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Persona 3 Reload, and Silent Hill 2 were all snubbed. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is very clearly coping that's happening from the journalists, and they're not exactly very happy. Who gives a shit about the rating of the game ultimately at the end of the day, because the rating of the game comes from you urinalists and nobody trusts what you guys have to say anyway. So let's get into this article from The Gamer. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm, especially if you like journalists that are coping, because this is going to be a fun video. The Game Awards have finally dropped its list of the year's Game of the Year nominees, and just as expected, almost nobody is happy with the results. That's mainly because Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, which again, by the way, I do not like the fact that Erdtree is on Game of the Year's nomination. I do not agree. As much as I love Elden Ring, and you will never hear me not be advocating for a Souls game, at the end of the day, I can't advocate for a DLC taking up Game of the Year against other games that were actually full-on games and not just additions to a game that already won Game of the Year. I don't care, right? It doesn't mean anything to me, but that's me personally. That's mainly because Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is on the list, despite being a DLC expansion. Though there are plenty other people unhappy about well-liked titles like Silent Hill 2, Helldivers 2, and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth not making the cut. Of course, to actually have your favorite included, another game would need to be cut. The question is which one? Outside of Shadow of the Erdtree, the only title that you can make an argument for not deserving its place is Black Myth Wukong, as it's actually the lowest ever rated title to become Game of the Year nominee at the Game Awards, sitting at an 81 on Metacritic. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. This is the journalist trying to maintain or feel like they're maintaining their level of superiority over the narrative. They're trying to say because they themselves didn't vote this obviously awesome game high, that it doesn't deserve to be nominated as Game of the Year. This is massive levels of cope, ladies and gentlemen. It's so obvious that Black Myth Wukong is not the game that they want to win Game of the Year. I think it would be hilarious if it actually did win Game of the Year, but let's be real, it's probably not going to. But still, there's no way they could have avoided not talking about Black Myth Wukong, one of the most massive games we've ever seen come out in recent time, and you're gonna sit there and pretend like because the journalists didn't vote it high, that's why it should be ignored? Get the fuck out of here, man. These guys are absolutely ridiculous, and they're sitting here thinking they're on some fucking throne where they get to decide who's what. Like, no, you don't. Nobody cares about what you have to say. Gaming journalists are at the bottom of the bottom in terms of priority over what anybody listens to. The problem is literally every other single-player game that has ever been nominated for a Game of the Year award at the Game Awards has a higher score. The lowest score for a game before Black Myth Wukong's nomination was jointly held by Control and A Plague Tale Requiem, which can only manage scores of 82 on Metacritic for a variety of reasons. Oh, so 1 point is going to be enough to say, you know what, we can't do it. We can't do it. We shouldn't put this game in Game of the Year. 1 point. So 82 is acceptable, but 81 is a travesty? Is that what we're going with right now? Other games that are quite close to Black Myth Wukong's score include Stray, which I personally loved, Resident Evil Village, which was good, The Outer Worlds, which was okay but a little short, even Player Unknown Battlegrounds and Hearthstone were more highly rated, but Black Myth Wukong differs slightly in that there are games that were released this year that are much more highly rated, yet were snubbed for the grand prize anyway. Bro, okay. It's so obvious that these journalists think that what they decide is highly rated, what should be game of the year, or at least mentioned. Nobody cares, bro. Nobody cares. And you know what? They're actually right to an extent, because 90% of the vote at the Game Awards goes towards journalists, right? Goes towards the mainstream media access, which means that 10% from gamers, that was big enough to get Black Myth Wukong into Game of the Year nomination, because we know as fuck that you journalists did not vote for this game. We know that you guys did not put this game there. So if that game is there, that means that 10% was really loud, ultimately at the end of the day. But still, these people are melting down because they thought that they could crucify Black Myth Wukong by giving it a bullshit review score, where ultimately it didn't end up mattering at the end of the day anyway, and it got a nomination for a Game of the Year regardless of how much they tried to avoid it throughout the year. Then it says, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth sits at a score of 89, nobody cares, which probably has Ryu ga Gotoku Studios wondering what it actually has to do to get a nomination, while other high-profile titles like Silent Hill 2 Remake, Warhammer 40k, Space Marine 2, Helldivers 2, Persona 3 Reload, and even Dragon Age of Veilguard were all more highly rated than Black Myth Wukong. Yeah, nobody gives a fuck about Veilguard. That game's a massive failure. Space Marine 2 is a fantastic game. Fantastic game. However, it is way too short to be taking up a Game of the Year title. I mean, the game, I finished the campaign in like, I don't know, 7 hours. Maybe even less than that, to be honest with you. I think it was 6 hours. I did it in 3 streams or something like that. It was unfortunately very, very short. So I wish it was longer, but the game was fantastic. Game of the Year, though, I don't know if it's Game of the Year, but I think it's definitely in the right direction. If they were to expand upon it and keep going more and make it longer, and good, not just longer for the sake of longer, then I think that it could definitely get towards Game of the Year. But as of right now, I wouldn't make it Game of the Year. No, unfortunately not. And as much as I love the game, Persona 3 Reload, I mean, it's Persona. People love Persona. Helldivers 2, bro, Helldivers 2 is not fucking Game of the Year territory. I don't care what anybody says. I know there's a lot of Helldivers players out there. I get it. Helldivers 2, I played it for a little while. I understand. I get it. It's fun, all that stuff. But to call it Game of the Year, I mean, this will be one of the most simplistic Game of the Year's games ever voted, right? It has a very simplistic gameplay loop, which, again, people love, and that's fine. But you guys got to look at it from a Game of the Year perspective. Is it really Game of the Year? I highly doubt that. Silent Hill 2, again, is a remake of a previous game. While it was made decently, ultimately, it's not good enough to be Game of the Year, in my opinion. It's not even anywhere close. This just sounds like a massive meltdown from a games journalist that doesn't like seeing Black Myth Wukong be on that list, because ultimately for them, they view this game as a massive fucking win for the Chuds. That's really what it is. They don't want to give a win to the Chuds. They can't stand giving us wins. Then he says, if we stand back and try to figure out exactly why Wukong made the list, the fact that it smashed records on Steam when it launched probably has a lot to do with it. It's a pretty good game, which I even admit in my review, but its massive commercial success has undoubtedly played a part in its grabbing top spot. Sales aren't a metric for quality, though, as that would mean Resident Evil 5 isn't the best in the series, and we both know that isn't true. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that's cope. Like, this journalist is coping massively, and I'm here for it. I love it. I love to see the journalist cope. I don't know how many W's Gamergate 2.0 is going to take, but at this point, we're running out of W's to get. I don't even know what's happening at this point. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate if you get to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.